Hey, how's it going? This is Sam Sauter from westchannelmedia.com. Manage about $200,000 to $300,000 per month in paid advertising spend profitably for about 15 to 20 clients. And we primarily advertise on Meta and LinkedIn. Those are our two main channels. In today's video, I want to talk to you specifically about LinkedIn. That is our favorite platform. That is our highest returning platform. We have a new client that we're working with that is a software and hardware company that has raised close to about $150 million up to this point. We were hired to take over the LinkedIn side of their business. And I want to quickly show you guys about, firstly, the projections that we gave them prior to working with them. And then I want to show you quickly on the ads, the creative and the campaign setup that we leverage to get them the best results possible. Okay, so quickly, I just want to show you the projections that we gave them first. So before working with every single client, we pride ourselves on setting very, very clear expectations. We actually sell a lot of potential clients around why they should not advertise. We prioritize building relationships and have the compounding of goodwill work in our favor as opposed to against us. And one of the ways we do that is by setting very, very conservative projections. And if we ever really fail to perform or hit those conservative projections on our end, we honestly will just refund the client before they even have the opportunity to ask. That's why up to this point, we've pretty much grown through just organic word of mouth, and we've had one refund request in our career. So I want to show you an example of those projections that we give clients. Follow me on my screen share here. What you can see is that for every about $3,000 in advertising spend, we had three scenarios: conservative, overperforming, and optimized. This is in the context of an enterprise type sale. We're going to go into and talk about what this particular offer was and who they were selling to. But keep in mind, this was an enterprise type of sale, which is always going to drive up your lead costs. Most of our clients that are targeting smaller companies or just individuals pay much less than that. But quickly, I just want to give you an idea on what they were paying for costs. Okay, so first and foremost, for the audiences that they wanted to go after, we believe the CPMs would be approximately $100. That's the same and constant in all three scenarios here. From what we're seeing with our clients, the cost per lead is going to range from about $160 to about $100. Most of our clients are paying closer to $30 to $50, but this was a very affluent, sophisticated enterprise sale that's going to drive up all your costs, but also scale up the opportunity massively when we're talking about contracts of this size. We're seeing that approximately 30% of those leads are scheduling and booking calls. 75% are showing up for those calls, which leaves the client as a cost per call around $650 to about $450. And the close rate on these enterprise sales varies radically. We don't like to make promises on the close rate unless the client has a proven sales system in place or unless we have a case study with another similar client that we've had in the past. But we try to be ultra conservative, and we showed the client that even if there was only a 2% conversion rate to a 7% conversion rate on a package that was $50,000 annually and was actually a multi-year contract, so the LTV was in the multiple six figures, that would bring their customer acquisition cost to about $33,000 in the most conservative scenario, $10,000 in the kind of overperforming scenario, and about $6,000 in the hyper optimized, ultra profitable scenario there. And then what this client told us is that the annual revenue for their particular service offering was approximately $50,000. We factored in a conservative assumption of 20% annualized churn, which effectively brings us to $250,000 CAC to LTV. Another key important metric to think about is not just CAC to LTV when thinking about the top line revenue that your campaigns are going to generate you, but you really want to factor in the CAC to LTGP. This was pioneered by Alex Ramosi, that term, lifetime gross profit. This company was both hardware and software, so there was some fixed costs that they would incur. We asked them to look at the gross margin at the individual level of each potential sale and assume what that would potentially be. And in this instance, it was about $50,000 per year in annual profit. And it was actually closer to $300,000 to $350,000 a year in lifetime gross profit. But we tried to just be very, very conservative in our projections here. So you can see here, even in the most conservative scenario here, that would be a $30,000 customer acquisition cost, $250,000 of lifetime gross profit. This scenario here would actually be a CAC to LTV of 25 to 1. And in the optimized scenario, it would actually be a CAC to LTV of about 35x or upward of that. Another thing that is not super closely related, but a small side tangent we tried to mention to the client when they were working with us is that they were primarily leveraging cold outbounds as a mean to getting clients. The challenge with manual outreach is that the thing that they don't consider is that the cost for labor of a US-based employee making those outreach attempts is often higher than what you would pay for an impression from a targeted advertising campaign. Let's just quickly go through here and explain what I mean. So cold calling and cold emailing, if you wanted to pay somebody $50 an hour and they could make 200 or 300 dials in a day or something like that, which is a lot, by the way, that's most people are doing much less than that in corporate sales, you're going to pay roughly $1 per impression. And the challenge that you're going to have is when you're cold calling and you're cold dialing is, number one, you're going to lower morale. It's a very difficult, very tedious job for the person that's doing that manual outbound. You're also going to have to deal with the challenge of bypassing gatekeepers depending on the target audience. When you have involuntarily pulled somebody's contact information off the internet and started manually outbound reaching to them, oftentimes there's layers of people that you have to navigate through. Conversely, if somebody sees a paid advertisement of yours, typically the end user has voluntarily themselves saw your ad, responded to your ad, and wanted to be contacted directly. And you'll oftentimes receive personal direct line communication to that person because they themselves wanted to be solicited versus the other way around when you're doing manual outbound. So right now, conversely on LinkedIn, even on some of the most affluent demographics there are out there, you're still only paying about 5 cents for every given impression. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. One contrary argument to doing targeted advertising is very, very difficult if you have hyper specific narrow audience sizes. Okay. So the benefit of manual outreach is you know exactly exactly where every single dial is going. You can have a hyper curated specific lead list. The advertising is still very targeted, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have a percentage of leads that are not qualified, which is why in the models that we referenced here earlier, you can see here that only about 30% of leads actually book calls, and only about 75% of those book calls actually end up showing for an appointment. Now that we showed you the projections, let's get inside the advertising manager. First thing that we're doing with a potential client is we're getting super detailed information on their ICP, their ideal client profile. We want to know, if we're working with a client, what are the key defining characteristics that make somebody qualified for your specific service offering. We tried to find 10 to 20 hyper-specific audiences that we thought had a high degree of likelihood of getting us in front of those people. Typically, the main filters that we're using to get in front of our target audiences, we're using number one, the job title function, number two, the industry filter, company size filter, and lastly, one that is commonly overlooked, which is the job seniority function. Commonly, a challenge that we see in a lot of LinkedIn advertising accounts that we are asked to take over is that they're solely reliant on job title targeting. The issue being is sometimes your ideal prospect will have a job title that is just slightly different than the job title you specified and not receive your ad because of a marginal difference. When instead, you could be targeting a job seniority, for instance, the owners of particular company, partner status, vice president status. These are all job seniority levels. You can oftentimes expand your audience size and group in a lot of other prospects that are otherwise qualified for your service that might have a marginal difference in their job title. So after we specified exactly what we wanted from our audience selection, we created 3 distinct marketing messages. I'm going to show you those here. The first angle that you can see that we created here, what was essentially the lead magnet for this particular business. Because this was an enterprise level of sales, something that is very, very high trust, what we advised the client to do is to actually provide a lead magnet to where they incurred some type of physical loss. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, when you're doing such a large enterprise sale that requires a very high degree of trust, the only way to really bridge that trust, because it's not such a transactional impulsive sale, is to provide a level of service at your free level so they can get a sample of what it would look like to work with you. Before I owned my digital advertising agency, I worked at a $25 billion fund where we would often be asking investors for, on average, between $5 and $10 million of their total investable assets. This was a very complex and long sales cycle, and the way that we overcame that was by providing a lot of free value on the front end before we ever directly asked for compensation. So the way that we did that was we did free portfolio audits where we had a team of analysts that would analyze every single detail holding or investment that they had in their account, oftentimes spending 20, 40, 50 hours creating a detailed proposal for them. And by doing so and incurring that physical cost and showing that level of detail, they had much more confidence when they were considering transferring their assets over to our company to be managed in our investment fund. Now, with this company here selling an enterprise SaaS solution that was hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales, we encouraged the business owner to offer a free assessment that highlighted the problem that their specific solution solved. So you can see in this instance, they were offering a free indoor air quality assessment for the school. Their particular technology was an indoor air quality monitoring solution. By providing this free audit of the air quality, although it incurred them a great deal of cost by having somebody boots on the ground and doing that assessment, we saw a meaningful improvement on the response rates. The second marketing angle that we tried to play into was what I called the fear angle. This is where you can see here, we wrote, uncover the hidden health risks in your classroom. The copy wrote, is your school's air safe? Many classrooms have hidden indoor air quality issues that can impact student health, focus, and performance. This was designed to capture a whole different segment of the market that was more fear-driven rather than opportunity-seeking. The last angle that we really tried to highlight, what was called the grant angle. So this angle was all about communicating the potential grants that these schools were eligible for if they took their indoor air quality monitoring more seriously. One of the things that we try to do with potential clients is something called pocket scaling. Pocket scaling is this concept pioneered by a bunch of other media buyers in our space. And what that talks about is that every single ad pertains to one little pocket in the marketplace. So what we're really trying to do is the more ads that you have, the more spokespeople, the more angles that you can hit on, you're capturing all these different little market segments, because certain benefits are going to appeal to one subset of the marketplace. Certain benefits are going to appeal to one segment of the marketplace. Oftentimes we have clients that are running ads solely with a male spokesperson. We will group in a female spokesperson oftentimes that will allow us to capture in a whole nother market segment. This becomes really, really important as you start to scale past $10,000 to $12,000 per day, which we do with some of our clients. If you can follow me back on my screen share here, another thing to keep in mind is that we are typically not leveraging automatic bidding like we are on the Meta advertising platform. Meta, we are typically giving the algorithm full discretion. The algorithm is so sophisticated and so professional. We have a lot of confidence in allowing the algorithm to spend the budget in the best way that it sees fit. On LinkedIn, conversely, the algorithm is not as sophisticated, and we place either a manual bid or a cost cap to prevent our advertising dollars being spent when the audience starts to become incredibly competitive or saturated. There's a lot of big advertisers oftentimes that will come out of the woodworks and start spending egregious amounts of money to particular audiences that will drive up lead costs across the entire platform. By placing cost caps or manual bids on our bidding strategy, oftentimes we keep our lead costs low, or conversely, we don't get the spend allocated altogether. We would much rather have a client have a small drop in their advertising spend for a short period of time over conversely having a tremendous amount of money being spent with a very few amount of results to show for it. Once we launched the ads, we noticed that there was a clear outlier in terms of messaging. The grant angle performed significantly well for for us. So we created multiple different variations of that particular ad and cut out all the rest. Specifically, there was also clear outliers in terms of the audience size that was very clear early on based on the lead cost. We started testing other audiences to see if we could beat that performance. If we find that a particular audience can generate us a lead cost of $80, typically what we'll do is we'll allow a new ad set that we're testing to spend twice our target CPA. So twice of 80 would be $160. If we do not generate a lead after $160 to spend, we typically turn off that advertisement and either double down on what's already working or start testing some of those other targeting options. In the beginning, the first thing that we're optimizing for is our cost per lead, but then the next thing that we start optimizing for is cost per call. Oftentimes what you'll find is that a particular campaign will generate cheap leads, but those leads aren't necessarily resulting in qualified phone calls. And after a bunch of calls have been taken, we can actually start to optimize towards what is getting us the highest conversion rate or the highest return on advertising spend. But in the beginning, you don't have enough data to make a snap judgment like that. We commonly get the question with clients, why do we typically leverage image ads over video ads on the LinkedIn platform? The reason being is that we typically have to pay a much higher premium for the video ad placement conversely to the image ad placement. The downside to the image ad placement is the prospect isn't consuming as much nurture material, as much information on an image ad versus a video ad. But nonetheless, we find the quality on the platform of LinkedIn is so much higher than any other channel. And conversely, the click-through rate on the platform is a lot lower than other channels. These viewers on LinkedIn are typically much more focused, much more thoughtful, much more intentioned. They're not typically as easily distracted or swayed like they are on some other channels. A great click-through rate on LinkedIn ads might be 0.5 to 1%. And because the quality is so high, we typically opt to have the cheapest possible leads rather than trying to secure that video placement where we have to pay a premium just for a little bit of additional nurturing. Another small detail to keep in mind is that regardless of whether or not you are successfully advertising to cold traffic on LinkedIn, it's very important that you at the very least retarget all of your website visitors on LinkedIn. That is a no-brainer, very low-hanging fruit, value unlock for your business depending on the amount of scale that you're operating at. And all that resulted in getting us qualified leads for approximately $100 and qualified phone calls for around $600 to $700, right where we had predicted when we initially launched the challenge. Now, this is a new client. They have a 6 to 12 month sales cycle, so I'll keep you posted on the financial ramifications of this campaign long term. But the good news is that we hit our target cost per qualified call, and we have leading indicators of something that appears to be a very profitable campaign for the business owner. So I know that was a bit of a anticlimactic, kind of boring video for you guys, but I'm hoping that that was helpful for you to kind of understand how we think about our LinkedIn advertising campaign setups. I'll publish another video here in the future to let you know how this campaign transpires and what the downstream financial ramifications are for the business. But this is a great starting point for anybody who is selling B2B or enterprise and wondering how can I get in front of my target prospect when I know that they're not typically frequenting on some of the social channels like Meta and Google. And if you're a business that's doing at least $50,000 to $100,000 per month in revenue, I encourage you to book a call with our agency. On that call, we'll talk to you about potentially improving an existing channel like Meta, like LinkedIn, like Google that's already working for you, or conversely helping you to tack on an additional channel, like maybe you're already doing well on Meta, but you want to add LinkedIn as a great source of a diversification for your business. The average business that we work with is doing between $5 and $10 million per year in revenue, and they're very much concerned on the sellability of their business and thinking about it in terms of an asset that is sellable. And in order to do that, a potential acquirer or a private equity firm wants to see that you're able to successfully advertise across multiple different channels. So regardless of where you are, we want to talk to you about potentially LinkedIn, Meta, or PPC or Google. And lastly, even if you're not doing between $50,000 to $100,000 per month in revenue, you might be a good fit for some of our done with you consulting options. There's a link below this video depending on where it is posted, but just click the link, book a call, and we'll try and help you out. Even if it's not with our business, we can point you in the right direction of somebody else who can help you out. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I'll see you in the next video, and thank you so much.